Hello, welcome to Frank's School. Here's my gloss for the beginning of the 9th episode of James Burke's The Day the Universe Changed. An episode called Making Waves. Roger's here. He opens with Swiss Air. You know, I love his style, really. He opens with Swiss Air. You wonder what's going on now. Well, he's in Geneva, probably where the plane's landing, and he'll talk about the Swiss as a nation of clockmakers and how Newton basically had such an orderly world for 200 years or longer, and the result was logical people like the Swiss and good and skilled. Then he goes on, I'm just sort of telling you what's going to happen here at the moment. He goes on to talk a lot about electricity and how it was. People knew it was there, but they didn't understand it. Volta, I think that's the name he's saying. Of course, we get volt from that. Brunatelli, I don't know if the name's spelled right. I didn't research these as much as I maybe should have. Electroplating and could electricity have something to do with chemistry? You know, of course they didn't. You know, they didn't know yet about these things. The Castle of Chillon is. It's interesting he would choose to go there. I've been by it quite a few times in the train. I've actually never stopped and gone in it. But the Castle of Chillon is where Lord Byron, I think, is the one. I think it was Lord Byron. One of the Romantic poets wrote a famous Prisoner of Chillon is the name of it. Lonely as a cloud is a quote from I wandered lonely as a cloud. From now I'm thinking it's maybe Shelley, but and he refers to the bad poetry. I take a little bit of offense. I know that people don't read that much of the poetry of the Romantics anymore, but you know, his take is on things. He's a scientist, and that's got a little bit of a dig there. I've never read The Prisoner of Chillon, but anyway, that castle is noteworthy for that. And I like the fact that he does bring Romanticism into the mix to try to have you understand what were people thinking, how were they thinking at that time. He's a scientist. Another example where he kind of makes a dig that I wonder about, he said in the last episode, back in Neuschwanstein, he said that he had cornered the market on bad taste. In Neuschwanstein, well, I don't know about that. I mean, true, I'm talking about the episode before, that Ludwig practically bankrupted Bavaria with that, but artists and craftsmen had to do that. I mean, they made those things, and you know, it's not what I would want, but boy, I'm not so sure I'm ready to say it's bad taste. You know, some of that room where the choir is singing is in so many ways excessive but gorgeous. Well, so anyway, he talks about a Dane in Copenhagen, Ersten. That I don't know the name, and I don't have the companion series to this. I don't know so much about him. Faraday, I recognize his name. 1831 is. I put that there to give you some feel for when is all this going on. The Morse code. He goes to the United States. He's been in Switzerland. Talks about, well, the Chillon is in Lake Geneva at the upstream, where the river, the Rhone, comes into Lake Geneva. So that's still in Switzerland. Copenhagen, USA. Then he comes back to Cambridge. I didn't write that in there, but I think Cambridge. This Young is, I believe, the man's name. The idea that light traveled in waves. He mentions Maxwell. I very much begin to get out of my element here. I did not study this really. Thomas Edison, everyone knows about him. In New Jersey, that's where he did his work, but his laboratory was taken to Detroit by Henry Ford. He is denigrating, I think, somewhat about Thomas Edison because he had his assistants. And another thing that Burke clearly feels strongly about is technology is not science. They are not the same thing. But so many people, myself included, I've been guilty of that in the past, to confuse the two. Science is having to do with understanding how it all happens, and technology is sort of what you can do with it. Then he goes back to England and is coming across, well, and then radio is where I'd ask you to stop, actually. Marconi, he mentions him. He refers to a German, but he doesn't name him, that ended up getting credit for that. And there's where I'd ask you to stop. Now, something happens to me, and I think I'm going to save it for another day to try to explain it, that I begin to falter, I personally, at a certain point in many of these fields, and it happens here. I begin to become lost at this point. And I'll have more to say about it. I mean, already as I'm watching this, I was struggling. You know, and it could be it has to do with my education, or the holes in my education, or, I mean, I've still lots of interesting things to see. But it's deeper than that. I'm going to try to explore that a little bit. It's going to be personal, to explain what is it that happens to me sometime around the end of the 18th century, or 19th century. All right, well, it's going to be pretty heavy viewing, but you can do it, and then I'll continue to read my Decentralist Manifesto. I have 2 or 3 more days of that. All right, bye for now.